in the heart of the Caldorian highlands, where the wind howled like forgotten spirits and the land rolled in endless emerald waves, the greatest warriors of the realm gathered for the once-a-decade tournament of steel. Among the dozens who answered the king's summons, two names stirred the most noise: Kael the Quiet Blade and Lady Virelle the Unbreakable. Virelle's reputation preceded her like thunder before lightning. Her armor, forged by dwarven hands and enchanted by sky mages, was rumored to be impervious. Her twin war axes, Maul and Mirth, had cleaved through the skulls of giants and the rib cages of wargs. In a dozen tournaments, she'd never been touched, let alone defeated. Kael, on the other hand, was a mystery. He wore no steel. His clothing resembled the garb of a traveling monk: linen shirt, loose trousers, and a worn leather sash. Strapped to his back was what most took for a broken farming tool, a thin, curved blade the length of a man's arm, its handle bound in faded cloth, the blade dull and chipped. When Kael stepped into the ring for the final duel against Virelle, laughter erupted from the stands. Even the king smirked behind his jewel goblet. Virelle didn't laugh. She roared. "This is a jest," she bellowed, pointing her axe toward Kael's weapon. "A child's toy? A kitchen knife? By the gods, I'll cut you in two with one hand and still have the strength to toast your funeral." Kael said nothing. His face was calm, his eyes steady, as if he were merely observing the wind. The horn sounded. The duel began. Virelle lunged. The arena trembled under her charge. She was a whirlwind of steel and fury, her axes blurring in the air like silver comets. The crowd held its breath, anticipating blood. Kael sidestepped, with barely a whisper of movement. He evaded her swing. And then the next, and the next. Virelle snarled, frustrated. "Stand still, coward." He didn't. She attacked like a storm god. Sweeping arcs, devastating slashes, overhead strikes meant to split trees in half. Kael bent, slid, turned, and danced. Not once did he raise his blade. Not once did he speak. "You mock me," she spat, chest heaving, sweat glistening on her brow. "Fight me like a warrior." At that moment, Kael finally drew his blade. It shimmered, not with magic, but with precision. It wasn't chipped. No. Those were deliberate indentations, catching the light to hide its true edge. And it wasn't dull. In fact, it gleamed with a quiet menace. He whispered something, almost a prayer, and then he moved. One strike, not a flurry, not a sweeping arc. A single, precise, almost lazy stroke. It struck the seam beneath Virelle's shoulder, an exposed joint in her supposedly impenetrable armor. A seam no one had ever noticed. A seam Kael had studied, watched, waited for. There was a sharp clang and then silence. The crowd leaned forward. Virelle took a step back. Her axe fell from her hand. She looked down. A crack ran from her shoulder to her chest plate, like a spiderweb of failure. "No," she murmured. Then her armor shattered. Pieces fell to the ground like rain. Her pride, her shield, her reputation, scattered before thousands. Kael did not raise his blade again. He merely turned, bowed once to her and once to the crowd. Virelle knelt, stunned. The king rose, mouth agape. Then, slowly, he clapped. Others followed, hesitant at first, then thunderous. Later that night, as the firelight danced in the great hall, Kael sat alone in a corner, sipping quietly from a wooden cup. Virelle approached, cloaked in a simple tunic now, the fire combat replaced with something more human. "You humiliated me," she said. Kael looked up. "I gave you my best." She sat beside him. That was no ordinary blade. "No," he agreed. "It was forged by my father, a rice farmer. He made it to cut through bamboo. Thin, light, but strong where it matters." Virelle stared into the fire. "You didn't win because of the blade." "No, You watch me, study me. For years, I've been to every tournament, sat in the shadows, watched every strike, every movement. I knew you would never expect a farmer's son with a peasant's weapon. Virelle laughed bitterly. I didn't. I thought I was invincible. I wore armor not just of steel, but of arrogance. Kael finally smiled. Even the strongest armor has a seam. They sat in silence for a moment. Then she asked, "What now? Will you take the prize? The king's favor? The command of his army?" Kael shook his head. "No, I came to test myself. I found my answer." She looked at him, puzzled. "Then what will you do?" "I'll go home, plant rice, maybe teach a few students." Virelle blinked. "That's it? That's enough." For the first time in years, she felt something crack. Not her armor, but the wall she built around herself. This man had no titles, no trophies, and yet he had beaten her in front of all, not with rage, not with strength, but with purpose. She extended her hand. "Teach me." Kael hesitated, then clasped her hand. "Only if you're willing to forget everything you think you know." She smiled. "That's the easy part. I've already forgotten who I was." And so it was that Virelle the Unbreakable vanished from the tournament grounds. In her place, whispers began a warrior clad not in steel, but humility, a woman who moved with grace, wielded silence as her shield, and struck only when it mattered. And beside her, always, walked a man with a farmer's blade, the warrior who taught the world that sometimes one precise strike is all it takes to change everything.